Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and I'm privileged and delighted to welcome a very, very accomplished woman from the US, Tracy J. Edmonds. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. Tracy is the owner of TJE Coaching and Consulting. She's the former Chief Diversity Officer of Anthem Incorporated. She's an author, and all of you who know me know that I'm very, very partial to authors. So she's an author of a book titled Wild Hair, and you can see the book just behind her. The book is A Courageous Woman's Guide to a Bold and Authentic Career. So Tracy, let's talk about coaching first. Tell me about what got you into coaching and who do you coach?
Ash, I can't remember a time when I wasn't coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I take that all the way back to being the oldest of three in my family. I have two younger brothers, so it always felt like I was the lead and somehow coaching others to do what they needed to do or achieve the goals that they set out. So especially in my professional career, as soon as I got into Anthem, because I grew up with Anthem, literally. I was there for 31 years. And growing up with that company, especially once I stepped into a leadership role, I was coaching those who reported to me. But then I found that women were coming and knocking on the door, asking for guidance and support in achieving their career. So I've been doing it all my life. I don't remember not doing it.
Okay.
It's who I am. So I primarily coach women.
Mm-hmm.
And I specialize in women of color because that has been my journey in the corporate world. And so that's what I know. That's my lived experience. And that's what I love to coach.
Mm-hmm. And at what stage did you decide that you wanted to give up a lucrative corporate career and just go off on your own?
Yeah, I can't say that it was a decision to step into entrepreneurship. It was not a conscious decision. Literally, I walked away from Anthem because I was looking for opportunities to continue to grow. Mm-hmm. And at that time, after being with the company for 31 years, after being in executive roles for many years and achieving Chief Diversity Officer status, I thought the next logical step was to be a head of HR at a large organization. So I headed down that path. Mm-hmm. And what I found is as I was pursuing that, I wasn't feeling that light and that fire within. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes God has a bigger plan. I did not get the job and I was relieved. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going, well, what's next? What's going on? And it took me a while to figure that out, but I decided to do what I love. Mm-hmm. And I was so afraid to be an entrepreneur. I was literally a corporate soldier, 31 years in corporate America, never envisioned being an entrepreneur, but it was a calling. It was the thing I had always done and I couldn't stop doing it. And so that's what led me to it.
Wow, that's amazing. And you mentioned that, you work with a lot of women of color. What are some of the challenges? And don't give me names or anything, but what are some of the challenges you normally work with?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great that you're asking this because I literally just completed an 8-week course for Black women only. Mm-hmm. And it was a sprint to help them with some of their greatest challenges. Okay. And the thing that they deal with is, with intersectionality, we're dealing with a couple of issues of being female and being Black in America. Right. And those two issues come with a whole host of challenges. Mm-hmm. So what we find, especially for women of color and Black women in particular, there's an issue with creating sponsorship. Mm-hmm. There's an issue with being seen as valuable and a significant contributor to the organization. So how do I put my voice in the room? How do I find a way to be heard? When you're the only in an organization, either the only woman sitting at the table at high levels, and especially if you're the only Black woman sitting at the table, as I often was, many times you're not seen. That's so ironic because you would think someone like me with all this hair would definitely be seen, but many times because people have biases and stereotypes about both women and about those who are African-American, the intersectionality of that becomes really, really hard. So putting your voice in the room, being vulnerable, right? Because as women and women of color, in order to progress in our career, we have to trust those who are not like us.
Correct.
And that's a difficult hurdle for many women, Black women, to overcome. So those are some of the issues.
And over the years, Tracy, have you started to see a change beginning to happen, or are we still a long way to go?
You know what? I think that there is a sense of an awakening, you know, with what has happened over the past few years in terms of the political challenges that we faced here. There's been a strong political polarization in the United States. And we also know about George Floyd, who stands out, you know, most significantly probably in most people's minds because of the visibility that it had. But there have been many George Floyds, unfortunately. But there is this bit of an awakening that's happening, meaning organizations are saying this was right in our face. We have to get on the right side of this issue. However, it takes a lot to change culture. It takes a lot to undo hundreds of years of bias. So while I am encouraged by some of the first steps that I see in the hiring of more African-American leaders, in the placement of more African-Americans on boards, et cetera, where they can influence, there's still a lot to do to change the culture. So those 11 women that I just finished coaching, they're still seeing challenges every single day. Wow. So on the one hand, I don't think the problem is solved, but I'm very appreciative of George Floyd's life and others who are paving the way for companies to wake up. So that's a roundabout way of saying I don't think we solved it yet.
You made a very, very strong point, and I completely agree with what you're saying. I've been reading about George Floyd and all the challenges that the entire community has gone through. And I know that, I've keep reading about the US. I've been there many times. The polarization that you spoke about is very true. So, but Tracy, let's come back to coaching. Let's talk about a simple question that a lot of our audience wants to understand. Who should look for a coach?
Yeah. You know what? Coaching's not for everyone. And I have coached people unsuccessfully, and meaning they didn't achieve the goals that they set out to achieve. So first of all, what I look for when I am looking at a potential client or they're seeking me out, one is their clarity about the issue. What is the problem? Because we can't address a problem we can't define. And that doesn't mean they're crystal clear about it, but they can articulate that something is amiss. And so that's really, really important. When you know that you will do the work, that's the other critical thing. Most coaching relationships break down because the individual, the person being coached, isn't doing the work.
Correct.
That's necessary. So I look for clarity around the issue. Those who are seeking it out typically are those who want to achieve a big goal. And that goal, the size of it, when I say big, is relative. For some, it's about how they show up in their leadership and their ability to influence and impact others. For others, like one of my clients, it's about ascending to the highest levels in the organization. So, but you can articulate that and you're willing to do the work. Those are the two things.
Very interesting. And, when you look at a coaching association, what, in your opinion, should be the length of the association?
It's until the goal is achieved, right? So coaching is a little bit different from mentoring. Many of us build mentors around us, and it's more relationship driven. It's more about learning from the mentor's experiences. So what has been Tracy's journey, and what can she pass on to someone else who is maybe going along a similar route? So it's more relationship based. When we talk about coaching, we're talking about addressing a very specific need, a goal that someone's looking to achieve. So having that coach by your side to achieve that goal, usually the relationship is done when the goal is achieved. And many times I have clients who just dream big and big and bigger, and we continue to work together for an extended time to help them navigate achievement of those goals.
Okay, terrific. And my next question to you is that, and I've often been asked this question, how does a coachee evaluate whether she or he has a good coach?
Yeah, you know what? I tell the women that I coach, first of all, there has to be alignment. And what I mean by that, and when I do a consultation with someone, I want them to feel good about who I am and how I come across. I'm not the coach for everyone. I hold my women accountable. I push them into a place where they get uncomfortable sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
There's homework that they have to do. So it is about that alignment and that connection. Can you feel a connection to how your coach approaches it? The second thing is results. You know, it's results. So I come from the business world. Like I said, I grew up in corporate America. I spent the first 20 years of my career in operations, which is about results, the customer and the results that you produce for them. And so I took that mindset into HR and into my coaching. So anyone looking for a coach, look for results.
Wonderful. My next question to you is, about the next gen that's coming into the workforce. Millennials are already in, the Gen Zs are starting to come in.
Yep.
How should organizations prepare to coach the younger generation? And what are some of the challenges that you see they are being faced with?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I'm firmly rooted in Gen X. So I'm of that generation.
I'm probably a generation older than you. So
you think the boomers? You're with the boomers, maybe?
Yes, the boomers.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I will say that most of my clients are millennials, and they are growing up in a world where they've always been connected. Right? They've always had cell phones, internet, those types of things. And so that speed, that desire to grow quickly in their career and to move as fast as they can is really, really critical for them. The other thing is they grow up in a gig economy, right? So everybody's gigging here. They're very creative, and this opportunity to create a business or to do something in their communities that's impactful is right there at their fingertips. They don't see any barriers to that. So when I think about my corporate experience and dealing with millennials and helping to manage them, is about being clear about expectations of roles. So sometimes it's challenging for millennials because they want to hit it and move on to the next thing. And as we know from those of us who are Gen X and older, that the journey, especially through corporate America, is a little more complicated than that. And so taking the opportunity to lay out clear expectations for them in terms of what good work looks like and what the journey looks like, so that you don't get frustration. That's really, really important. But also, what we have to do as those that are older is to leverage that skill set they bring in. Right? They don't see any barriers, right? Whereas I worked, then retired to live. They live, and work has to fit into that. And so really tapping into that mindset, the skill set, that belief in anything is possible, that goal that they want to impact the world is refreshing. And we don't want to damp that down, but we have to find ways to utilize the skill sets that they bring to the table. And that's very true with the women that I coach. They dream big, and many times they're frustrated in the corporate environment because they have a big dream. They believe wholeheartedly in their capabilities, but they can't navigate. They're not sure how to do that. And so that's where folks like me and you, who have grown up in that environment, can offer some sage advice and some guidance and some skill set development, where they're a little bit impatient, right? They want it now because everything comes now in the world that they've come from. So we have to teach them.
Very well. What a great answer. So Tracy, now let's move to the next segment of our conversation.
Yes.
Let's move to your book. Wild Hair, A Courageous Woman's Guide to a Bold and Authentic Career.
Yes.
Tell me about your book and your motivation to write it.
You know what? I always wanted to write a book. So I grew up as a child writing in diaries and reading a lot. And so the written and spoken word is really important to me. And that was a part of who I was. And as I got older, I said, well, maybe I can write a book. And again, I'm Gen X, so I'm not dreaming big going, I'm going to write a book. I'm going, maybe I can write a book. I can squeeze it in. And I remember articulating this actually in a work setting when we were talking about where do you want to be in 5 years. And two of my goals were to have completed my MBA and to write a book. Well, I ended up growing my family, and I did get that MBA, but the book sat on the back burner. So it was always a desire. And so once I stepped away from corporate, I did that. My goal, though, was to pay forward the experiences.
Mhm.
I didn't want to write just any book. I wanted to write a book that people could use, that women could say, oh my God, that's a fabulous lesson. This happens to me. That was my goal. So
Okay.
that's what led me to it.
Okay. And how long did you take to write the book?
It took me from beginning to end. I started in January of 2020. And when I say started, I mean sitting down and kind of the idea for the book and what it might look like and strategizing, and finished it in November, December of that year, and then published it in March of 2021.
Wow. I've spoken to so many people, and I call all these books pandemic books. I published a book as well during the pandemic.
Yes. Well, we had time. We had time on our hands. We were in our homes, and I took my time, to be honest. I took my time. I really enjoyed the process and took my time with it. So I didn't have a timetable. It was like, just get it done.
Wonderful. So you also say, Tracy, that you believe your authenticity is your currency for transforming yourself. Yes. Help me understand this and give me an example or an anecdote.
Yeah. So many times, and again, my book is geared towards women. And so many times with the women that I've coached, I've seen them be limited by their inability to be authentic or their perception that they could not be true to themselves. So what I have learned through coaching women and writing the book, there's 4 aspects to authenticity. Self-honesty, where we're honest to ourselves about what we want, about our skill sets, about what we want to do with this life that we have. The other part is having the courage, putting our fear in action. The other one is confidence, completely trusting your own skills and abilities. And the last thing is resilience, meaning we persevere. What I've seen is that women who are challenged with some type of professional hurdle or something that they want to do with their lives or career, oftentimes are struggling in one of those 4 areas. And when we can unpack what's going on in that area and address the concerns there, that's when they have the ability to transform. Now, on a very simple level, let me give you a simple corporate example of a woman that I coached. She wanted to progress in her career. And the conversations were always about, what do you want to do? And finally, she spit it out as she said, I want to be promoted. I believe I deserve it. Right. And so that moment of authenticity, that moment of self-honesty gave us something to work with. And so very simply, just build the case for that, the plan for that. Had the conversation with her manager, who pushed back because she was in a male-dominated field. He pushed back. She cleared the hurdle on those things, and she was promoted. Wow. And so a lot of times for women, it's like, can I? Well, your authenticity is the key. That's your currency. If you don't believe it, and if you're not authentic, we can't work with it. We have nothing to work with. So that's an example of how it works.
Oh, wonderful. So Tracy, I have time for 2 more questions. And our viewers and listeners love to get to know my guest a little more.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Tell me, as someone who from corporate America to an entrepreneur, a coach, an author, what are some of the core values you believe in?
Oh, wow. One of the ones that's really important to me is connectedness. I believe we're all connected in this world, and that our journeys are the ways that we can educate and connect to others. And so I believe that. I believe in coming to anything and everything I do with an open heart and an open mind. And so I believe in authenticity. I believe in that. I've not always walked in that. And once I discovered it, it's a value that I hold dearly. So those are probably my 4 top ones that are most important to me.
Wonderful. My next question is, what does success mean to Tracy?
Oh my gosh. Success for me is, well, one, I feel joy when I see transformation. So the more women's lives that I get to help them transform is one of my measures of success. And I just know that when it all comes to an end, Ash, I don't want to be the one that says, who could I have been if I just would have been me?
Hmm.
You know, what could I have done if I had just been me? And so success is about just every day living in my authenticity and helping others to transform.
What a great answer. And my last question to you now, Tracy. This is for the many, many people who are going to listen to everything you are saying. What would your advice be to a young individual who's starting off on her or his life in the corporate world?
That is a great question. I would say dream big and do the work.
Okay.
Those would be my points of advice. Dream big, because many times I didn't. I was always willing to do the work, but I didn't always dream big. And so I would tell them dream big and be willing to do the work.
Wow. Tracy, on that note, thank you so much. I mean, it's been such a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for talking to me about coaching. We did touch upon diversity a little bit, but I'll come back to you and talk in greater detail sometime on diversity. Thank you for talking to me about your book, Wild Hair. And I'm sure it's available on Amazon, is it?
It is. It is on Amazon. Yes.
It's on Amazon. But thank you for being so transparent in your entire conversation with me. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.